Welcome to the On Purpose podcast, where together we will learn from personal stories and explore thought-provoking topics, all with one goal in mind: living a more purposeful life. What is up, everybody, and welcome to episode 200. Unbelievable. Episode 200 of the On Purpose podcast. It's a pleasure to be here with you. Man, I am humbled to know that we are 4 years old and 200 episodes deep into creating a purposeful community that is spanning the world wide. And if you know, we recently came up with a new purpose statement, kind of to reframe what we're doing. I'd like to share it with you. And it is: the On Purpose podcast exists to put smiles on people's faces around the world by delivering and sharing thought-provoking, inspiring, and purposeful content each and every week. That's our purpose, man. And we've been doing it now for 4 years, 200 episodes, and I can't thank you enough, because without you being here each and every week, I'd just be talking to myself. So thank you so much. If that purpose statement resonates with you and you want to help spread smiles and laughter and thought-provoking content around the world, please join us at patreon.com/the On Purpose podcast. We have some membership options, $2, $5, $10 a month. And you know your money's going to help and do that. Another way you can help us out is please like, subscribe, share on your favorite podcast app. And you can sign up for our newsletter. I send a newsletter out once a week, kind of outlining the shows that are coming up. We do recaps on there. So there's a lot of ways for you to get involved in your community and to help us share our purpose. And we appreciate you. All right, this week, episode 200. It's a first for the show. And that is, I'm bringing back a guest we had before. It's our first ever repeat guest, and that honor has to go to one person who I think I constantly get comments about his episode, and I read his book now the second time, and I got more from it this time than the first. And he's been one of probably the biggest purpose drivers I've been around, and just watching what he's doing. So it had to be none other than Zach Mercurio, coming back to join us for episode 200. His first episode, episode 55, aired on April 2nd, 2020. And one of the things that I took away with that was a quote he said, and that is this: you can't not matter, right? It's impossible for you not to matter. And man, I was like, gosh, if everybody just knew they mattered, if everybody knew in their moment of hardship, indecision, doubts, insecurities, that they mattered, that somebody somewhere around the world was thinking of them, what would we do different? Will we approach life with more confidence? How do we go about it? And that's been a quote that stuck with me and that I've used in many different down moments in my own life, I guess, if you will, or doubtful moments. So I can't wait to get Zach back on the show with you to see what he's been up to in the almost 3 years that have passed since we talked to him last, and to celebrate episode 200. So sit back, relax, get your notepad out, and enjoy this week's interview with Zach Mercurio. Zach, welcome to episode 200, my friend of the On Purpose podcast.
Yeah, I can't believe it's been 3 years of life.
3 years. And I'm gonna start with a little lesson I learned from my good friend. I don't know if you know this guy named Dr. Mercurio. He's pretty good at this stuff. I'm gonna start off with something I learned from you, and I'm gonna share this, Zach. I want to let you know that without you, we would not have reached nearly the audience worldwide that we have in the 4 years. And I truly believe it was your episode, based on the numbers and the amount of comments we get continually over 3 years ago. It was your episode with your data and your studies about purpose that kind of validated that we weren't just some random guys sharing nonsensical stories, that we actually might know what we were doing. So I want to thank you for taking that time and believing in us 3 years ago. And it's really propelled us to where we are today.
Thanks. That was one of my favorites because I remember we were sitting down together in a studio. And I know we're not doing that now, but that was a great experience. It's one of the only times we've been in person starting that relationship with the podcast. So I loved that.
Yeah, man.
So I'm glad to hear it.
Nah, dude, I'm just humbled to have you back and our community. Like, no shit. For 3 years, I probably once a month, a couple times a month, I get messages about your episode and just the content in there. And it's just a privilege to be able to share your story with our community.
Yeah, I mean, I get an assist from what I study. I get an assist from the topic, almost an unfair assist. No one wakes up and is like, oh, I prefer to feel insignificant today.
Right.
So I sort of tap on this universal desire that we all have. And I try to make it, my goal is to take the research, make it practical. Like, here are some things you can do to make sure you can realize and see your significance every day and help other people see theirs. So I'm glad that people are resonating with that because we need more of it.
You can't not matter.
No, you can't. You can try not to.
Yeah.
But you matter. I mean, every little input into the system has an infinite outcome.
I love it. And I will tell you personally that I've kept that quote that you told me that day at the show. On days where I have doubts, on days where I'm like, man, I'm not sure. Like, is my energy going the right place? Am I doing the right things?
Yep.
Like, that always brings me back to, like, stay on your course, stay true to your purpose, and it's all going to work out.
Yeah. And, you know, because I have doubts too. I mean, I don't just wake up and start screaming my purpose statement. You know, every time I get up, I study what I need most, and I teach what I need most. I mean, I have crippling self-doubt. I'm in the middle of my second book right now, which is like an exercise in self-doubt.
Yeah.
And, but it doesn't matter if I have self-doubt because I can still contribute to someone else today.
Yeah.
Right. Like, if I'm fearful, no matter what's happening to me today, I can be something to someone today.
Absolutely.
And that's why I can't shake this purpose stuff, because it's always accessible. Like, you may not be able to complete your to-do list today, or get a speaking gig today, or write your 500 words today, but you can possibly contribute to another human being today. It's always there. It's always accessible. And in turn, it creates that sense of fulfillment that we know through interviewing people on their deathbeds create a meaningful life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I'm going to test you a little bit here. And I'm going to test you because I don't know if you remember, but we got a little warm up we do, and it's been 3 years. So I got to see how consistent is Zach in his warm up structure here.
Probably, I mean, whatever. You probably not consistent, because it's going to be whatever spark, whatever the universe quarks and photons enter into my brain right now to create rational thought is what's going to happen.
Well, it's funny because to get ready for this, I actually listened to our episode last night, which I'd never do. Like, I don't think I've listened to one.
Yeah, I didn't listen to it, so we'll see what happens.
Yes. All right. We'll see consistency. All right. Here's your warm up, Zach, before we get into what you've been up to since we last talked. You're on a deserted island. You get one food. What are you going to eat?
One food.
Yep. Deserted island for the rest of your life. Choose wisely, my friend.
Oh, gosh. Maybe I'm wiser now than I was last time. One food. Now you're going to lose your mind. I'm going with oatmeal. How boring is that?
So much more boring than old Zach. I got to tell you.
What was I telling you? I say chicken wings last time?
Dude, yes. Chicken wings.
Listen to me.
Hot,
listen to me.
Bone in from Wild Wings with ranch.
Listen, can you imagine eating? But that's it. You're on a deserted island. I don't know when I'm getting off. And here's how I've grown in the past few years, right? I mean, if I were just to eat that chicken wing day after day, I would have serious problems. But, you know, I feel better in the long term when I have oatmeal than when I have chicken wings. And so I'm thinking long term now.
I don't know. I don't know how this is gonna go, Zach.
Oatmeal, man. With as long as I can have like dried fruit in there, and can I add like too much brown sugar in there? Like mix
You
it
might as
around.
well. You're balancing out all the wings
Come
you
on,
ate
I'm
in your
telling you,
previous
you in
life.
the long term, the chicken wings are gonna mess you up. So I'm thinking about
Now you're oatmeal.
the long term. I guess this is how I've aged. And I have become a little bit more, I've been conscious of what I put into my body and what it
Sure.
does to my mind, you know.
Yeah. Okay.
So
All right. All
I've
right. I'll go with
changed.
oatmeal. Yeah, I'll accept it. I'll accept it. I mean, I'm holding judgment. Like I'm kind of like
You
reserved on it.
should
I'm
you
not
should
100
judge.
percent sure where
You
this
should
goes,
judge
but
me.
we'll see.
I'm sure no one's ever said oatmeal. So there you go.
Yeah, I've had some very interesting. Probably the most interesting is one of the guys took agave, so he can
Oh,
make his own
yeah, okay.
tequila.
All right. Because
And
then you can also eat the agave and then you can ferment
multifaceted.
it, make tequila. Oh, yeah.
All right, superpower. You get a superpower. What superpower would you have, and why do you want it?
Yeah. So right now, I would really like to feel exactly what other people are feeling.
Mm.
Because like really feel it. Because right now we have this like idea of empathy,
Ooh,
but we need like I would love if somebody created an empathy generator that allowed you to actually feel what someone else was feeling, because it's easy to talk about it. It's easy to say like, oh, I see people struggling, but until you really feel the struggle, I think that it's key to prompting people into action. So that would be a cool superpower.
yeah.
I mean, would I have it on all the time? I don't know. That's a philosophical question,
You have
but
to be eating a lot of oatmeal because it drain your energy.
tons of oatmeal
Just oatmeal,
and
by the way.
eggs too. Eggs with the oatmeal.
You didn't get
I don't.
egg.
I only get one.
Okay.
I see. I would have an egg, a couple eggs, and oatmeal.
All
That's all
right.
you need. That's all you need, really, to
All
survive.
right. Favorite book.
I'm going Man's Search for Meaning, Viktor Frankl. Um, and just because, I mean, if you've read that book, it's the most horrific conditions you could imagine.
Right.
And this guy who has a psychiatric background is sitting there thinking about meaning and purpose and using meaning to pull him through. You know, it's the best. Like he who has a why to live can bear almost anyhow.
Yep.
And you know what's unbelievable is since he wrote that, all the psychological studies on resilience, on well-being, on flourishing have all reaffirmed that point
For sure.
scientifically.
All right. This is a new one. This next question has come with us in the evolution of the podcast. So this is an original answer for you. No comparison. You get to have dinner with one person. Who are you having dinner with? They could be dead or, passed on or currently with us. Who are you having dinner with, and what do you want to ask them?
Mm. Man, I'd really like to have dinner with the historical Jesus.
Okay.
I mean, that's radical stuff, man. Turn the other cheek.
Yeah.
Like, love your neighbor as you love yourself.
Right.
Like, come on. I mean, the guy was also like sitting down, washing the feet of the dude he knew would murder him,
Yeah.
hand him over to be murdered. I mean, regardless of whatever your belief systems
Yeah.
are, I mean, I want to ask him like, okay, how do you how do you develop that space between the stimulus that's happening to you and this response that is so regenerative of even the person's energy that's going to hand you over to be murdered versus extracting?
Mm.
How do you do that? I mean, geez,
That'd
Louise.
have to be a long dinner. That's a long conversation. Although
It's all right. He can make as much food, right? He can just do it. Boom.
yeah,
Here's
that's
some more
true.
fish, right?
And he spoke very brief, right? So maybe
Very brief. Yeah. I feel like he'd drop some like truth bombs. He'd be a great podcast guest.
he would. Yeah, yeah. Would I definitely have to be on my game for sure. All right. Well, very good. How you feeling? You warmed up?
I feel good. Yeah.
You want to know what your superpower was 3 years ago?
Sure.
Spider-Man, because he had control and you wanted to be able to teleport yourself around.
Oh, yeah.
That was a
Yeah.
good one. And you were reading Blind Side at the time, Blind Sight at the time.
Oh yeah, science fiction book.
Post-apocalyptic,
Yeah,
hard science
interesting.
fiction.
Yeah, I'm currently reading another hard sci-fi book
You
right
like
now
that stuff.
called Diaspora. It's about these AI generated people who have to help humans to avoid their own destruction.
Well, that's a hell of a way to kick things off right there. How do you, so you like what you call hard science fiction, which means it could actually happen in our world.
Uh-huh. Yep.
Does it scare you? Like all the AI stuff? Do you get like, oh man, looks a lot like RoboCop and Terminator.
I'm not scared of the technology. I'm scared of the people who use the technology.
Yeah,
I mean, technology is usually not the issue when it comes to anything. It's usually the humans who are designing it and using it. So
sure.
I think that if we could use these technological advances to double down on things like community, if we could use these things to double down on things like contribution, purpose, creating mattering for people, making sure that everybody can see like the upstream impact of their work. Like imagine if we used AI to be able to give you a predictive model of how you treat somebody would manifest in their life 10 minutes, an hour, 2 hours later. We would be very different beings, like to each other. So I think there's potentially good uses for things like this, but the people who are controlling these things kind of freak me out a little bit. Freak me out.
Yeah,
Period.
I agree with you. All right, so let's shift gears to what you're currently working on. Since we last talked, actually, let me go back. Your book, The Invisible Leader, fantastic. I just finished reading it for the second time,
Awesome.
and I swear I got more out of it this time. I actually, right here, you can even see for proof, I got my highlighter, I got highlighted pages.
Nice.
I actually sent off your practice and purpose exercise on page 121 to an organization the other day that was struggling to get people on the same page.
Mm.
And yeah, so I want to thank you for putting that out into the world and the difference it's making.
Of course, I'm glad it's making a difference. You know, it's funny. I published it in 2017, and in some ways, it's becoming more relevant than ever, especially over the last few years of this pandemic. Right, a lot of people have called the pandemic apocalyptic. The Greek root word of apocalypse is apocalypsis, which means to reveal. And I think more than ever, people have been revealing parts of their lives. Organizations have been having to reveal who they really are. And, you know, I think all of that has forced us into this bigger question of why me, why here, why now?
Mhm. And is that a tie-in then to, did that kind of lead you to your current area of studying, and that is how to create matter at work?
Yeah, like creating mattering. So the big realization that I had was I was doing all this work on purpose. Purpose is the unique contribution that you make. It's the reason for which you exist. It's your use and usefulness. So purpose is asking you the question of what use are you to the world and to the people and the community around you. But I realized something, and I had this thought I couldn't shake. I was reading a research article by this psychologist named Gordon Flett, and he studied this concept of mattering for years. And mattering is the belief that we're a significant part of the world around us. And I had this thought, I can't tell somebody to find their purpose or find their contribution if they don't first believe they're worthy of contributing.
Interesting.
Yeah, like it's really difficult for us to use our strengths or contribute if we first don't believe we have strengths
Okay.
or believe that we have something worthy to contribute. And then I start digging into this more, and I'm like, oh my gosh, there's an epidemic of antimattering. I mean, upwards of 65% of people feel invisible or unvalued in work, right? Which is the place where people spend a third of their waking lives. Whether you physically spend it there, you spend time doing what you're doing.
Sure.
You know, there was a study on kids. So coming up through high school from 6th grade through 12th grade, Education Week did a study of over 66,000 school-age kids. They asked them, do you think your teacher would notice if you were absent? Over the half of the sample said that they did not. think their teacher would notice them if they were absent. The elderly, right? We know people in nursing homes. Almost 60% of people indicate they didn't have one visitor in 12 months, right? So, with all that's going on, and then you see loneliness, you see mental health issues, and then you really start piecing it together, and you start to see this missing link that if people don't believe that they matter, it's easy for nothing to matter to them. And digging into this, I've been further reaffirmed that this idea of mattering and creating mattering for each other has to come first. It has to be a priority for us.
Prior to purpose.
Prior to purpose. I think it's the prerequisite. We have to believe that we matter we have to believe that we're significant and are worthy of a contribution to find our contribution. So oftentimes what I was seeing is that, and I think that these things go hand in hand, right? If you discover and you see your purpose and you act purposefully and you're contribution centered and you see evidence of your contribution, you're probably more likely to feel like you matter, right? That gives you the evidence of your significance. But I also think it's very hard for people who, say I find my purpose, we're on this show together, I do some exacts practicing purpose exercises, I state my purpose, I think purposefully, but then I go into an environment that shows me evidence of my insignificance day after day after day after day after day. All of a sudden, my purpose starts getting called into question. My contribution gets called into question. And I start asking, do I really matter? And then when people start experiencing antimattering, it can do two things. It can cycle into despair, or what the research finds is that feelings of invisibility often result in acts of desperation. So people act out. People act out to get attention. And look at what's happening. I think it's groups of people who are fighting each other for the attention they don't get in their families, their communities, their workplaces, and their schools.
And I love it. And it's so funny when you say that, I think back to like literally as a parent, right? Or working with young kids in school, the kid in the class that was acting out generally wasn't doing that out of maliciousness. They were doing it to be seen, right? Like that is how they got seen. However, they were reinforced, they got seen by acting out.
Yeah. I mean, just go on social media and you'll see antimattering, the fruits of antimattering in action.
That is interesting. You bring that. Is that why it's so toxic there?
Well, I think the problem is that the social media isn't toxic in itself.
Right.
It's the fact that it has to be used for people to get signals of significance because they're not experiencing it in their real terrestrial life. Right. So if I'm not experiencing significance from my family, and like Gen Z, for example, it's the loneliest generation, the most isolated generation, research finds. Was it a coincidence that Gen Z is using TikTok and using Instagram, and people are trying to become influencers? Because why? Because people are trying to get a signal of their significance, the like count, right? That shows them, oh, you are valid, you are significant. And when we're not getting that in our everyday, and in our interactions in community and in schools and in workplaces, it's no wonder that people are going there for their significance. It's the same aspect of like, back, years ago when my parents were working, it was like the pension. What kind of pension plan you got? That was your symbol of significance. Like, or what kind of benefits package or your salary. Now people want to be liked. They want some symbol, something in their environment, some evidence of their significance.
I love, and so we were talking before we hit record on this, and you were asking about my lifestyle changes and traveling full time and being in an airstream and meeting strangers. And I think honestly that is kind of why this traveling community, if you will, creates really good bonds. Is because literally everything you do matters, right? Like you're in charge of your water, your electric, where you're going to park, where you're not going to park. If you got to, before the weather gets bad, like everything you do is like, I would say is not on autopilot. Like when I had a house, I'd walk in, turn on the water. I didn't think twice, turn on the light, didn't think twice.
Interesting.
But when you're out here, everything matters.
You can see the evidence of your significance of what you're doing, because if you didn't do it, you'd know it.
Right. You wouldn't have power.
You'd feel it. Yeah, that's an interesting thing about how our lifestyle has actually divorced what we're currently doing with its inevitable impact. Like we can't see the impact of what we're doing while we're doing it because it's just taken for granted.
Right. So how do we here's something. Can I get matter? Can I start to understand how I matter in the world by helping others see how they matter first? Or do I have to see my matter before I can help somebody else?
Mm, it's a good question. I don't think it's directional, but
Okay.
like, for example, there's things that we can do as individuals to reaffirm the belief that we matter.
Okay.
Uh, one of those things is adopting a so that mentality. One of the things we find in researching purposeful people is they tend to have a so that mentality. I'm doing this so that what? I think I told this story probably in the first time we talked about that janitor that I interviewed
Yeah.
named Ellen. And I asked her, what's the most meaningful part of your job? She said it was cleaning the toilets in this dormitory after the weekend. And I asked her, why was that so meaningful? And she said, well, I hate doing it. But every time I go in to do it, I say to myself, I'm cleaning this bathroom so that these kids don't get sick. Right. Being able to link and imagine whatever it is that you're doing with its inevitable outcome is key.
Yeah. I love that story in the book because her purpose was she felt like a mom to the kids. It wasn't about getting paid. It was
Yeah.
if she doesn't do it, she doesn't know that these kids have a clean place to go.
Right. The other thing is that so have that so that mentality, but the other thing is to ask yourself better questions.
Yeah.
We often ask ourselves questions that assume that we don't matter, like that the day's just a burden. For example, like when we get up in the morning, you say, "Hey, what do you have to do today?"
Yeah.
Instead of, "Hey, how's what you're going to do today going to impact other people?" It takes the same mental space, but the
Right.
attention that it directs you to is completely different, right? It helps you cultivate the evidence again of your significance, and that's what's key is that you maintain an environment that provides you with the evidence of your significance. But I will say this, and research is very clear on this. You can believe that you matter, but when you experience that you don't matter from the community and people around you, it's very hard to maintain that belief.
Mm. So what do we do there?
This is where I think we've taken the mental health and well-being work in the wrong direction. We focused on here's what you need to do to
Mhm.
be well. Um, be your best self. Live your best life. Here are the tactics for you to help yourself be well. But the key is that well-being is inherently social. Like the system that we're in usually impacts our well-being. For example,
Yep,
if you have a well individual in an unwell system, that individual will become an unwell person eventually.
for sure.
And so I think one thing that we can do is acknowledge our impact on others in creating experiences where people feel like they matter. And there's really three things we can do. I mean, there's three practice areas and we can dig into them later and as we move on, but making sure people feel noticed,
Yep.
making sure people in our communities and all around us feel affirmed, and making sure people feel needed.
Let's just go to those. And here's what I love, like for our community members, if you're not running a business, if you're not running an organization, you're running a family, this applies.
Yeah,
Right?
absolutely.
It applies. And if maybe I'm not even running a family, maybe I'm just me out living my life. It applies to me and my community.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I love about purpose. When you get down to like really diving into it, has no boundaries.
No.
It's not like it only
Right.
applies here, but not there.
Yeah. Human beings are, people say like work and life, right? And that's a false distinction that's meant to make us tolerate really poor experiences at work because we can say, oh, it's work, it's not my life.
Mhm.
But human beings are alive wherever they're living and breathing.
Right.
And that includes at work. And so this stuff is translatable. The other thing about mattering to know is that it's not just a nice touchy-feely idea. The first thing to know about mattering is it's a survival instinct. I was reading all about the instincts we have as babies when we're born.
Yes.
And one of the first instincts you have as a baby, the first thing that you do when you are born as a human being, everybody listening, you tilted your head upward to do what? To look for someone to care for you. You didn't even search food. You searched for a caretaker first.
Yeah.
We were literally wired with the survival instinct to search to matter to someone else. And that survival instinct has kept you alive to be listening to this podcast right now. So mattering is actually a survival instinct. It
Dude,
never goes away.
No, and it's so interesting you use the birth of a baby, because literally a week ago before yours aired, I had Dr. Caleb Valdez on, who just wrote a book called Starving Babies. And it is all about the modern medical birthing practices and how it is interfering with the biological, emotional responses that a baby has immediately upon being born. It's just what you said, looking up and seeing mom. And he was even saying that if we left the baby alone and it just came out and we put it on his mom, it would literally crawl itself up to look for feeding and eye contact and feel human
but
touch.
we think that those go away. Those are survival instincts that are embedded into us. Like, we are wired to search to matter to other people.
And that's what he's saying is by disengaging that initial instinct, we're already creating, if you will, a trauma for a minute-old baby that now has to start reprocessing connections that used to just be, like you said, behaviorally there. Like, it was just instinctually what we did.
Yeah. But think about it. You're also re-traumatizing people every time you walk by them, and you walk by that janitor who's cleaning the public bathroom, and you don't look at them and say hi or thank you.
Absolutely.
I think that our behaviors re-traumatize people and create anti-mattering. These primal instincts, one story that really shows how that crawling around, how this actually translates into adulthood, is there was a psychologist, and he did a lot of work on ostracism. I can't think of his name right now, but he was in Brisbane, Australia. He was on a sabbatical there, and his sabbatical was near a prison. And a fellow psychologist who worked at the prison came home and was telling him about how she had to go to a case. And the case was they found a prisoner outside near the fences, just sitting there. He had escaped and he got all the way to the fence. He could have left, and he was just sitting outside. And the guards came to arrest him and bring him back. And they asked him, "Why did you escape?" He said he just wanted someone to talk to him.
Wow.
Just wanted someone to notice him. So I mean, that's one thing. So it's a survival instinct. It's also a fundamental human need. And then the third is a universal longing. We have in every culture, we have a universal longing. But what's powerful is that we can meet this need for each other through those three things: noticing, affirming, and showing people how they're needed.
So if I don't feel noticed, is it easier then for me to want to unnotice everybody around me?
Yeah. Or what happens is you go to a place where you do feel noticed,
which is a lot of times negative.
Well, a lot of times that's how we get the tribal politics we live in today.
Oh, wow.
Oh, there's a person standing on stage that sees me. They're talking like me.
Oh.
They're talking about things I can't talk to anybody else. So they're showing me I have significance. And we gravitate, right? We gravitate. So we tend to look at, or we overcompensate. So when we don't feel like we're noticed, we overcompensate. We become actually reliant. We have the over desire to matter to someone. So we be reliant on being noticed by others, and we constantly chase that. We lie. We make up stories. We embellish. We scream for attention. We were interviewing, we're doing a large interview study on how people experience mattering in life. And this one guy said that he remembers when he was a teenager, he was sitting down at his table and nobody would ever listen to him. And he just screamed, and sorry if this is sensitive to people listening, he just screamed, "I'm going to kill myself," at the dinner table. And I asked him why. And he goes, "I just wanted my parents to look at me, pay attention to me." And this idea of screaming to be seen, that's the other outcome. So either we silo down into very small, little isolated communities, or we self-isolate, or we act out.
Yeah. So what would you say is a healthy process to make sure that your desire to be noticed and to notice others is in balance?
I think that it starts with noticing others, because
Uh,
that will allow,
right.
because that will allow you to look outward, broaden your perspective. Things like, do you know your FedEx driver's last name? Right. I mean, do you know their first name? Do you, your barista that gives you your coffee every day, do you ask them how they're doing? Have you checked in with your friend or family member who you noticed was struggling? There's a big difference between knowing somebody and noticing them,
Ooh,
right? You can know your best friend, but not notice that they're suffering. Noticing is the deliberate act of checking in and becoming interested in the ebbs and flows of people's lives. Um, you know, I often have this saying to myself to schedule your good intentions.
yeah.
What I mean by that is I'm the nicest person in the world when I'm out walking my dog. I have all of these thoughts of who I should thank, I should write this email, all of that. And then I get back into my desk or whatever, and I have this big to-do list. And usually those to-do items are all about me, all about what I have to do. So I have to put it on my calendar, send thank you note to so-and-so, check in on so-and-so. So find a process. We have processes for everything else in our lives, but noticing other people
Yeah.
and showing other people how they matter. So make it a process, make it a hard skill. Ask people better questions, right? Instead of, "Hey, how are you?" If someone asks me how I am, like, I have an 8-year-old and a 5-year-old, I travel a lot. I don't even know where I am half the time. I can't answer that question. But if someone asks me a question like, "Hey, what is your attention right now? What are you thinking about right now? What are you struggling with right now?" I can definitely answer those questions. So ask people better questions. So those are some things that we can do immediately right now. Do you want to start? Find the next construction worker holding a sign, one of those stop sign things, go up to him or her and say, "Hey, I know a lot of people pass by here, but I just want to thank you for doing this because it enables me to have a road to drive on," and watch what happens. There's nothing more powerful than the moment a human being believes that they matter and
I love
sees
it.
that they matter.
Yeah, man, that's amazing. And here's something funny, or maybe funny for you, but so Andrew and I constantly get told by people from our past life, right, Fort Collins and the places we lived, that man, you're living the dream. Like you guys just travel and like you see cool stuff and you experience. And we do. We definitely get to see stuff and meet people and experience. But there's days where we literally be like, man, do we even matter? Like, does anybody even know we're gone
Hmm.
anymore? And
Hmm.
and it's funny that without
Hmm.
thinking consciously what we're doing, the way we immediately change that thought to no, what we're doing inspires people and helps people see what's possible, and we're just sharing our story, is we start by noticing others. Like we'll literally like, oh, you know why we're feeling this way? Because we haven't checked in with anybody in
Hmm.
a week.
Hmm.
And so almost like it became about us and not about them. So then we literally like just start texting, make it just like you said, we put it in our calendar, like, hey, Thursday's check-in day. So we're each going to make phone calls and check in. And yeah, absolutely right. When others notice being felt, like it fulfills you a little bit.
Yeah, it's so powerful when you feel seen.
Mhm.
And if someone's a leader here, and I mean leader is anybody who influences anybody, but if you're in a formal leadership role, I
Right.
mean, it's one of the simplest things you can do is to just come to know your people, learn your people, be interested, authentically interested in other people again, learn the ebbs and flows of their life. And then the other thing is that once you start noticing people, you can actually start being compassionate. I mean, empathy is coming to understand what someone's going through, but compassion is empathy in action. The only way we can be compassionate is to offer proactive actions to alleviate someone else's struggle. The only way we can do that is if we know other people struggle.
Yeah. Yeah. And you got to pay
So
attention, right?
yeah, like everybody wants to be compassionate, but they actually don't want to do the legwork to give them the data they need to act compassionately.
Right. They don't want to be
Like,
present enough to know.
yeah, like we all have these big values, and that's where the self-help movement is really leading us astray, is that really, I mean, if I could summarize anything, the best self-help is other help.
Yeah.
I mean, with what we know psychologically.
Right. All right. So,
Because you fuel the energy, like, because then, like, what you're doing for your body, what you're doing for your mind, it has a so that. This goes back to purpose.
yeah.
There's a so that, right, attached to it. And so, creating noticing and for people, noticing people, the act of noticing can actually help you feel more noticed, because you'll see how just a word that you say can make someone feel seen, and that's powerful.
I love it. Let's go to feeling affirmed. How do we make people how do we affirm others
Mm-hmm.
authentically? Because that's what drives me nuts. Is if somebody gives you
Oh
a
yeah.
compliment and you're like, dude,
Yeah.
you didn't really mean that. Like you literally
No.
just read Zach's latest paper and it said you're supposed to affirm me. So you gave me some like cookie cutter bullshit. So how do we affirm others as authentic and that establishes the goodness that we're trying to get after there?
Well, I love this because you have to be a noticer first. You have to notice unique things about the person. The reason why affirmation is inauthentic is people don't see us. They don't notice us. So they don't notice the uniqueness in us. So they just say, "Oh, hey, great job on that." Or they say thank you at 1 o'clock every day. Or they give you an awards banquet when you don't experience appreciation every day. Like, I
Oh,
can't believe there's an employee appreciation day. Like, if you if
right,
you if you need a day to remind yourself to do something to appreciate your employees, you don't appreciate your employees. I mean, the worst thing you can do is have a
right.
award ceremony or give somebody a certificate when they don't feel noticed and affirmed and needed every day, right? So, like, I think that's what happens. A great way to do this is to honestly, authentically look at somebody and name the gift they bring to your life, like the unique gifts that nobody else can bring. I remember, again, I have an 8-year-old and a 5-year-old. My 5-year-old needs help from my 8-year-old, and it's kind of cool to see, right? But there was one morning where my 8-year-old, on his own, we were trying to get out of the house, went over and helped my 5-year-old put his shoes on, right? It's a fairly mundane act, but I said to him, I said, "Hey, I just want you to know that I really like that you put these shoes on your brother, but what's more important is that you're thoughtful and you're thinking about other people when you're doing something. You're anticipating someone else's need and not being asked to do it. When you're at school today, I want you to think about how you can do that again and then tell me about it."
Mm.
So what it does is it's like, hey, there's a specific thing. I'm the kid. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm thoughtful. The action is thinking about someone else when someone doesn't tell me, then saying, hey, like, go do it and tell me about it, right? That's naming the unique gift that someone brings to a situation or to your life is important. And then also, I would add on to that, show people how their unique strengths make a unique impact.
Okay.
So tell them the story, like, because it's really hard, right? It's hard to see our upstream impact. It's hard to, like, really believe that, hey, if I say thank you, that it's really going to do anything for you. Like, I know it's good, but you don't get text messages every time you change the trajectory of someone's life. So one thing we can do for others is to bring that inevitable impact back to them. So say, hey, like, for example, if you're a leader, say you work in retail and someone smiles at someone and is super nice and empathetic to a customer, and then that customer goes out the door, instead of just being like, oh, thanks for showing up today, you say, hey, like, the way you smile, the way you engage that person, you listened really well. Like, just imagine that person's going to go out, they're going to go have lunch, they're going to they're going to see family today, they're going to have an experience after this, and you just impacted that. So thank you.
Yeah.
Right? Much different than just saying, hey, good job, Joe.
Man, it's fantastic. Yeah, and it's so crazy because feeling affirmed is such a basic need for all of us.
Yeah.
Yet we're so stingy to affirm others.
Yeah, because we think, well, some people say to me, Zach, well, this will boost their ego. It's entitlement, a breed entitlement. But the problem is entitlement, when somebody feels entitled and they act like they're entitled, that is a symptom of anti-mattering.
Oh, nice. So now you went
So
all the way back.
yeah, but because like, and the reason why I'm bringing this up is just a couple of weeks ago, someone said to me in a session, like, Zach, this is great, but this young generation, they're just entitled. They need a participation trophy. And I said, well, they wouldn't need a participation trophy to show them their significance if they experience significance every day in their communities
Yeah.
and in their families, right? Then the yearning for like a trophy to give us significance or a like on Instagram to give us significance is a symptom of not experiencing it in our everyday lives. So
And who,
entitlement is a
yeah.
symptom.
And who created that? That's what
Right.
when I speak to people that are my generation, like these kids these days, they need participation trophies. And I go, you know what? They didn't know they needed them until you created them to fill the void
Exactly.
that
Right.
exists,
Right. Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, exactly. But there's
right?
already the void.
It's a void. Like, why did this happen? Why in my generation did
Right.
I not get participation trophies? Because I didn't need it.
Right. And why is that? Well, because probably everybody around you didn't have a device in the palm of their hand that could take their attention everywhere from but where they are right now.
Right. And I didn't have to hide. Like, I didn't make a mistake right here with you and me and then have it go viral around the world to where I could never get
Right.
away from it.
Yeah. And you couldn't hide. You couldn't hide from obligations either. If I made a plan for you to go to lunch, we'd have to meet for lunch.
Right. Yeah. No,
I
that,
couldn't be like, hey, actually, hey, I'm gonna cancel. Can I, it's so easy to like reschedule. It's like we don't honor the dignity of people's time anymore. I mean, and I think the younger generation feels that. I mean, they feel that, so they're looking for something.
yeah. And honestly, in this lifestyle, this switch we made, one of our favorite things, like where we're camped now, we're the oldest folks here, which is kind of neat because I love seeing 20 somethings, 30 somethings that are taking sabbaticals or just walking away from lucrative careers and go like, wait a second, I want to find more out there. I want more connection. I want more time in nature. I want less phones, less commuting time. And I think we can learn a lot from them.
Yeah, and it's good, and they have strengths, right? This is where Affirm comes in. Like they have unique strengths, just like you. They have unique gifts. They have unique ways of seeing the world, and those things they make a unique impact. And so I think we have the responsibility. I think from a public health perspective, to be honest with you, we have the
Absolutely.
responsibility to create environments, organizations, and communities that repeatedly show people the evidence of their significance.
Right. No, 100%. Let's go to the third prong there that we had talked about was feeling needed. So my question for you is, how do we feel needed with balance?
Oh, like, yeah. So are you saying that like if we feel needed, then we'll just completely forget ourselves and
Maybe
overcommit?
either forget yourself or you want to be needed so bad
Oh,
that
yeah.
the people
Yeah.
under you can't develop.
Yeah. This is not about like that that you are so relied on and so needed that nothing would happen without you, right? This is not that. What feeling needed is that you know that you and your unique gifts are not dispensable.
I love it.
So that's the key. Like when people feel dispensable, they languish. Like think about it. Think about the last time you were super energized and you felt dispensable, like you could be got rid of in a second, right? But when people feel indispensable, they act indispensable, right? We commit to things. We show up. It's like, the example I frequently give is if I were to ask you to come to a dinner party tomorrow night and you said yes because you were being nice, and then tomorrow morning you woke up and you didn't want to go to the dinner party. And how easy would it be for you to get out of that plan? It's really easy. But if I said, hey, Jerrod, I want you to come to this dinner party tomorrow night, I need you to bring dessert. And you're like, yeah, I'll go. You wake up tomorrow morning and you're like, gosh, I don't want to go, but Zach needs me to bring dessert, right? It changes your commitment psychologically. And in communities, especially, we need that commitment. In organizations, we need that commitment from people. But when people feel dispensable, they don't show up, they don't share their voice, they don't share their ideas. And that's what I mean by feeling needed. It's the feeling like no human being is dispensable. And you said something to me at the beginning of the podcast. You said, if it wasn't for you,
Right.
right? Just saying those 5 words to people, if it wasn't for you, think about the last month of your life. Everybody listening, when's the last time you said that to somebody? It can be powerful to show people how you rely on them.
So, so I 100% agree, and that's why, yeah. So in getting ready to bring you back on, I saw that, and I was like, man, that is fantastic to let people know if it wasn't for you, we wouldn't have this outcome, whatever it is. We wouldn't have had this experience. We
Right.
wouldn't have these thoughts, and you're right, because that by saying that, I encompass you're noticed, you're being affirmed. What you did was needed.
Yeah.
So how do I get over the hurdle? Because I truly believe, Zach, there's so many good people in the world. And I think
Mm-hmm.
99% of the people want other people around them to be good.
Mm-hmm.
So how do I get over the hurdle that says I'm weak if I tell you this, or that if I tell you, Zach, if it wasn't for you, that is not an ego boost. It's how do I get past the negative stereotypes that come with helping others know their value?
It's sort of like when you really think about it, like rationally, though, it's like interdependence is a trait of the species you happen to be.
Right.
I mean, you can't avoid it. Like
Right.
you are an interdependent being. There is no 2 ways about it. Because even if you try to be like, even if you say like, I got it all myself, you're still driving on a road that was paved by someone else.
Right.
Your trash is being taken out by, well, unless you're living on the road, but that dumpster is being emptied by someone else. Your water is bening pumped into your house by someone else.
Right.
Your whole life is sustained by someone else. The self-help book you read is written by someone else. In fact, if you really think about it, you can't not be interdependent. So I think that what this comes down to is just acknowledging your interdependence. I think it makes you stronger.
I agree.
I mean, I think it makes you stronger if you tell people how you need them in your life and how you rely on them. I can't think of anybody more strong than somebody who's able to build a community where every single person feels like they matter. I mean, and it feels needed.
Which I think, to go back to the very beginning of, since I last talked to you, the pandemic took place. And I think that is one of the outcomes of the pandemic, is people are now more aware and searching out those communities that fulfill those needs.
Mm. And some of the strongest leaders, they don't cling to authority, they give it up, they spread it out, right? They create more leaders. They, on the strongest teams that I worked with, everybody leads.
Yeah.
And the leader empowers that because everybody feels like they matter.
Man.
And if someone doesn't, if someone around you feels replaceable, they're going to act replaceable. They're not going to commit to your cause, your movement, what you're trying to do. They'll act replaceable. They'll leave. But if they feel indispensable to you, if they feel like they're needed, they will commit. They will show up. And so I think if you want to do anything sustainable, I think that's the key word, sustainable over the long term, you have to rely on other people and you have to show them how they're relied on.
I love it. Zach, I'm telling you, you are on to a movement, my friend, right? Like in your book, and there's a quote in there that people buy from companies, they follow leaders, and they join movements.
This is what I'm talking about. Yes.
I'm joining your movement, man. I love what you are doing, Zach, and I can't thank you enough for joining me 3 years ago, when you didn't know anything about us, and then coming back on our 4th birthday, 200 episodes later, and knowing that you're still out there making this impact is so reassuring. We're thankful to have you on our episodes.
Again, I mean, this is a lot of work. Like for everybody listening, like doing a podcast is a lot of work. It takes a lot of commitment. like for you to do this. I mean, and so putting this out there, being able to put this information, give people access to these unique voices and expertise it's amazing. I mean, I think this is the future of how we can actually create communities of mattering, is that by creating platforms where anybody, everybody can share their perspectives.
Right.
You know, we can honor that. So this is awesome. It's awesome to be here. And of course, if you have like purpose on your t-shirt, I'm there.
Yeah, man, I got a little purpose.
You know, I still have my t-shirt. I wear it a lot. I get questions about it too.
I love it. I appreciate you doing it. Where can our community come to join your movement now and support your current work?
Yeah, so you can head to zachmercurio.com. Check out what I'm up to. But I'm the place I'm most active right now is on LinkedIn, actually. You know, I have a really interesting community there. I talk a lot about this in the context of leadership, because I feel like there's a real leadership vacuum right now. And I feel like one of the reasons why is that we haven't made caring a hard skill.
Yeah.
And scaled it. And so join me on LinkedIn, Zach Mercurio. And I am in the middle of a second book right now. And so we'll let you know when that's going to come out. It should be in the next year.
All right, well, keep your calendar clear. Episode 300, we're going to bring you back for the third time.
That would be awesome.
Zach, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks.
And remember, team, life is far too short to live any other way than on purpose. We will see you all again next week.